Hello. Have you recently been diagnosed with prediabetes or diabetes? Or perhaps you've had your diagnosis for some time, but you're struggling to get your blood sugar under control. Today, I'll tell you the story of my prediabetes diagnosis and what I have done to turn it around. I hope this information will be of value to you in your journey and that you'll find something to take away from it that can help you as well. Now, disclaimer right off the top, I am not a doctor. This is not medical advice. This is just my story, what happened to me when I was diagnosed with prediabetes. So I've made a few bullet points here I'm going to refer to. There's a lot of information to cover and I don't want to belabor the point and I also don't want to miss anything. So you will see me at points during this discussion, just, kind of referring back to my notes. So here we go. Okay, so in the early summer of 2024, I was really, really tired. I would go to bed at night, I'd wake up in the morning, and I felt like I hadn't slept at all. I'd have my breakfast, and after breakfast, all I'd want to do is sleep. I was also very thirsty, and I was urinating a lot. So this progressed during the summer, throughout the summer. I just felt like I had lead weights attached to my limbs. I felt like I had, I was just dragging my butt. I was just dragging my butt to get anything done, to try to do my yard work. I live alone and I have a big yard and I was just really struggling. Anyway, by the end of the summer, I was getting alarmed because I had dropped 20 pounds in 2 months without trying. Now I was 125 pounds at the time. And so that put me down to 105 pounds. And I have never in my life been 105 pounds. Even when I was a teenager at my slimmest, I was about 115. So this was super alarming for me. And it was also very, very alarming for my mother, who I am the sole caregiver for. And she had seen my dad drop a lot of weight just before he was diagnosed with leukemia, which eventually took his life. So, with that in mind, she was just panicking. So in September, I attempted to make an appointment with my doctor, and the doctor's office told me that he was on vacation for a month and there was no one covering for him. So I would have to, make my appointment for October, and they gave me a date. So I did that, and I suffered through for another month before I could get in to see him. Anyway, so basically, once I got in to see him, I found out I was diagnosed with prediabetes. And, because the doctors these days are kind of trained, they're not really trained in dietitian kind of things. They're just trained to find out what it is that your problem is, order some tests, give you some meds, whatever, right? So he just basically told me, stop eating dessert. And he gave me a sheet of paper that had a contact name and number for a dietitian to reach if I had any questions. So that was basically it. So I left that appointment that day and I was really gobsmacked. I was just absolutely confused. I was scared. I was just absolutely, I didn't know what to think. I had always read labels. I had been a label reader, nutrition label reader for years and years. I didn't eat. I tried to watch my diet. I thought I was doing a good job. I thought I was eating, healthy food. I was having a smoothie every morning with a banana in it and protein powder and sometimes a few berries. And, I just thought I was doing great. And I would, I'd look at the label and I would look at sugar. And if it was 12 grams or less, I thought that was good. I was completely ignorant of how much sugar is actually bad. I would look at carbs. I knew that carbs were important and I would try to eat most of my carbs for breakfast and lunch. And then for dinner, I would have a low carb meal, often not having any kind of starchy, thing at all. Like I wouldn't have pasta or bread or rice or potato or anything. Sometimes I would, but often I would just have a protein, a vegetable, and a salad, and which is what I still do to this day now that I've been diagnosed. But anyway, so I thought I was doing really well. I wasn't overweight. I didn't have high blood pressure. I didn't have, other than my chronic pain issues that I have, I didn't have anything that I thought would be, was unhealthy. Like, I didn't think I was eating unhealthy in any way. I really didn't. And so I was very surprised. I went home, and being the type of person that I am, I just felt like I had to get on YouTube and start doing some research on my own. I am the type of person who needs to research, whatever's happening in my body, particularly. And so I just started watching video after video after video. And I came across one particular channel on YouTube called Beat Diabetes, and the gentleman's name is Dennis Pollock. And I started to watch his videos, and he just really resonated with me. I just binge watched his videos. And the one thing that he did say was that he said, you need to get yourself a glucometer and start testing your blood. Now, I, was aware of the CGMs, the ones that you put on your arm, and, they give you your blood sugar in real time. They're wonderful, but they're very expensive. And being a retired person, I did not have the funds to be able to, that wasn't covered under my plan that I have as a retiree. So I just went with the old style finger pricking glucometer and started to do what he said. I started testing my blood. I figured out from what I was hearing on YouTube, what was high, a blood reading high that was high, what was low, what was good, what was bad. And the one thing that Dennis Pollock and I have in common is that I was not overweight, as I said, and I didn't have any of those kinds of issues, high blood pressure, nothing like that. But I was having these real swings. My blood sugar would go really high and then it would crash. And at one point, about a year prior to being diagnosed, I actually fainted at Walmart. I was in the checkout line, and I think what happened in that instance was that my blood sugar went too low, and I blacked out, and I woke up on the floor. And the woman that had been behind me in the lineup, she told me later that I was spread eagle on the floor, and she thought I was dead. And so she was my angel. She stayed with me the whole time until the paramedics got there, and they took me to Emerge. And in Emerge, they did ask me in the ambulance, if I had diabetes, and at the time I didn't think I did, so I said no, not to my knowledge. And so they did a whole battery of tests. I was there for 6 hours, and they basically just sent me home, said eat something. They gave me something to eat at the hospital, and because it was 9:00 by that point. This had happened at 2 in the afternoon, and at 9:00 at night, I still hadn't had anything to eat. So they did give me a little snack and whatever, and then sent me on my way and said if I had any other issues to come back, kind of thing. So I left there and was really basically on my own. Nobody told me at that time that I was having a, hypoglycemic incident or anything like that. They didn't test my blood for my blood sugar. They did all the other tests, but they never tested that. So anyway, go figure. But that's just kind of the way it is these days in healthcare. It's kind of hit and miss, So once I got this diagnosis, when I was listening to Dennis Pollock, he said that he was having fainting issues, and that that was the same kind of thing that was happening with him. He was going really high, really low, really high, really low, and he was having these hypoglycemic problems. And so I really resonated with him on that. And so I took his advice and I started to test my blood. After every meal, in the morning, first thing fasting, and then after every meal, an hour and a half to 2 hours after every meal, I was testing to see where I was at. I was figuring out what was high, what was low, and got a really good idea of what was happening in my body. Now, he also advocates for a low carb lifestyle, not a strict keto, but just a low carb, like really watching what you put in your mouth as far as carbs go. I didn't realize that your body, that carbs turn into glucose in your system. So, and I also didn't realize that that your body doesn't differentiate between fructose and glucose. So if you're eating a lot of fruit, like a banana, for example, has as much glucose in it, it turns into as much glucose as if you ate a candy bar. And I was having one of those every day, a banana every day, thinking I was doing great for my body with the potassium. And I was putting that in my smoothie every morning. So I was like, I was having a candy bar for breakfast, basically. So, it was a real learning curve for me, a real wake up call. And I started to adopt this low carb lifestyle and really, really watching what I put in my mouth. So now, basically, what I did is I also went to different channels that are keto channels, even though I wasn't doing the strict keto, but I wanted to get some recipe ideas and see what other people were eating that were doing low carb. And basically, Serious Keto is a great channel. He does wonderful work. There's a number, like there's the Keto Twins. There's just so many people that do videos. There's so many recipes. Oh my goodness. I looked up recipes on Google. You can put in anything that you want on Google as far as keto recipes goes. You can say keto pumpkin pie, keto mug cake, keto casserole, whatever you want. You can type that into Google and it'll come up with a bunch of different recipes for you to try. And so I have found my favorite ones and I've put them into a little, I've written them into a little book that I refer to, and I make those same recipes over and over again because I've taste tested the ones that I like the most. And I have everything from chaffles, which are a keto bread substitute that's made with basically eggs and cheese and almond flour, some psyllium husks, and baking powder. And then you put them in like a little mini dash waffle maker and make them into little waffles. And you can have those as bread. You can have them as a waffle with sugar-free maple syrup on them and butter. They're just wonderful. I use them as a hamburger bun. I use them as my bread for a sandwich. So I do those. I make a bunch of those up at a time. I basically have a cooking day that I do all my pre-cooking. I have keto desserts that I like. There's actually a keto mug cake that I really like. There's keto snacking granola that I make that I love. There's keto cookies. I mean, you can make keto anything. I don't eat any flour, so this diet is actually quite good for even people that are gluten intolerant because there's no gluten in almond flour. And then I use monk fruit sweetener or I use stevia as my sugar substitute. I eat a lot of chia seed pudding. So basically my diet now consists of things like meat, cheese, eggs, salad, nuts, seeds. I can have desserts that are keto desserts. I have, like I say, the chaffles as my bread. And, there's just so many different things. Berries. I do not eat any fruit other than berries, and mostly blueberries. And so those are some substitutes that you can do, or some things that you can eat with a low carb lifestyle that can help you to regulate your blood sugar. I guess the thing I would say for people that are newly diagnosed, that are scared, they're being pre-diabetic or even diabetic as a type 2, not a type 1. Type 1 is different, but as a type 2 diabetic, you can reverse it just by lifestyle. You need to exercise. You need to get up and move. It's very good to get up and move after you've eaten so that you can get that glucose going to your muscles. Go for a walk, do your dishes, do any kind of movement after you eat is a very good idea as well. I'm not as great about the exercise. I don't like exercise very much, so it's hard for me to do that. But I do what I can, and I have to do a bunch of stretches anyway because of my chronic pain. So, I have to be careful what I do as far as exercise goes because I do have a lot of chronic pain, and if I overdo, there's a fine line there. And if you overdo, you end up in trouble, and then for the next 2 or 3 days, you're paying for that. So, I do have to be careful with what I do as far as exercise goes, but I do try to get exercise in, and I do my stretches faithfully all the time. And so just like there's hope, don't lose hope. There, if you're vegan or if you are, carnivore or whatever, you can also figure out, well, carnivore is basically, you're not going to have any blood sugar spikes if you're a carnivore, but I just can't do that. It's not in my DNA to not eat vegetables. And salad and things like that. I just can't, I'm not enough of a meat eater that I want to eat just meat and eggs, basically. So, there's that. But as far as vegans are very high carb. My daughter is a vegan, and cooking for her for Christmas dinner is difficult. It's a very high carb diet. And for me, my body does not tolerate carbs. And so even a piece of toast will cause my blood sugar to spike. So basically, I have to, I just can't do it. But, there are vegans who, swear by a diet that they have for diabetes. And so you can look that up if you're a vegan. So to each his own, like, you have to figure out what works best for you. But I'm telling you that it is not a death sentence. I do know a couple of people that have died from diabetes, but they died because they didn't take care of it. They didn't nip it in the bud. They didn't do anything. They just kept on eating the way they always ate. They just figured they weren't going to change their lifestyle for anyone. One of them lost a toe, and then he lost his leg. Also got a dementia, like a really severe dementia that was like, he got violent and ended up in a lockdown facility, because he was violent. And it was all caused by his high blood sugar. And of course, high blood sugar is also responsible for heart attacks and strokes. There's an actual epidemic of type 2 diabetes, even among children, which is unheard of. And, we just have to stop eating all of this ultra processed food, and we need to know what we're putting in our mouths. And so anyway, the other friend of mine ended up going blind, and from diabetes. And there again, he didn't watch his blood sugar. And so he just did what he wanted to do, and he ended up blind in the end, and ended up dead as well, very young. I don't even think he got to 60. So, it's so important. It's just so important. And I know some people are stubborn, and they just say, well, I'm not going to eat I'm not going to diet. I'm not going to lose weight. I don't care. I'm going to eat what I want to eat or whatever. But, I'm just telling you that, as a person who lives alone, my biggest concern is that I would end up not being able to take care of myself. And that may happen down the road, like when I get to be, 89, 90 years old, or, even before. I might have to go into some sort of care or a senior's lodge or whatever. And I'm okay with that. But I want to end up there not because of something I did to myself. I want to end up there just because that's just life. And so for me now, I've managed to be able to keep my weight to about 108 pounds, which is, I'm okay with that. I'm good with that. I don't want to go lower. And I don't want to really go too much higher, because I had to replace my whole wardrobe when that happened to me. And thank goodness I'm a thrifter. That's all I can say, because my pants were falling off. My shirts, I went from a medium down to a small, and it just, so many things didn't fit me anymore. And so, I don't want to gain it back, and I don't want to lose anymore, because as we age, we do need to have a little bit of reserve in case we get sick. At my very lowest, just for maybe a month after I was diagnosed, I went down to 103, and I was panicked. I got on the scale every day, freaked out, because I didn't want to go down to 100. So in order to combat that, I did start eating some more nuts and seeds, which are quite high caloric foods. And so I, kind of managed to get my weight bumped back up. And now I'm, like I say, I'm about between 108 and 110. And that's where I kind of feel the best, and I want to stay. I also don't have, now that I'm eating clean and I'm not eating all of the processed junk, I've noticed some real differences with things like gas, popular, not a very popular subject, but I don't have the gas I used to have. I don't have as many stomach problems like I used to have. I do eat quite a bit of, eat Greek yogurt, plain Greek yogurt in my chia pudding every morning with nuts and seeds and a little bit of cream and some stevia and cinnamon on top. Oh, it's delicious. It's absolutely delicious. I actually love the way I eat. I love the way I eat so much that I would say I'd never want to go back to eating the way I did before. It doesn't even appeal to me. Doesn't appeal to me in the slightest. I don't feel deprived. I just feel satiated. I feel like I feel a lot healthier. And it's just a wonderful way to eat. Now I don't have to prick my finger after every meal because most of my meals are basically the same kind of meal. And I know that they're safe for me to eat, but I do still take my fasting glucose reading every morning just to see what my baseline is. It kind of gives me an idea, the day before, whether I'm creeping up, whether I'm still on track. Sometimes you get it, what they call is the dawn effect, where, it's just kind of, you maybe have stress or a bad sleep and your blood sugar is higher than what it should be in the morning. But I don't worry about that so much, just because it's, you fasted for 12 hours, sleeping, from the time you eat supper till the time you wake up is usually about 12 hours. Your blood sugar isn't spiking during that time. So I'm not, worrying about if it's a little high in the morning, but it is still a good baseline to kind of know where you're at. And so that's what I do. And I would really highly recommend that you check out Beat Diabetes if you're going through this. And also Dr. Sten Ekburg. There's just so many, Jason Fung. There's so many good people. They do advocate a lot for intermittent fasting. And I am not a faster. I find that if I fast, I actually get very weak and feeling nauseous and trembly, almost like I did when I would be hypoglycemic, kind of have one of those incidents. So I tend to just make sure that I have at least 12 hours in between my supper and the time that I'm having my breakfast the next day. And that seems to work for me. I've managed to get my blood sugar down. Pre-diabetic level, I think, was about 6.8, if I'm not remembering exactly, but I think I was at about 6.8 when I was diagnosed. And now in my fasting glucose is anywhere between 4.9 to about 5.5. Now that's Canadian metrics. So it would be about 85 to 95 in the US, something like that. Anyway, and so it's awesome. Like, that is actually normal. That is a normal blood sugar. And I'm not going to say I reversed my prediabetes, but I'm saying that you can reverse some of you can reverse the effects, the long-term effects, largely with your diet and your lifestyle. I don't take any metformin. I do take berberine, which is a natural supplement that is supposed to act somewhat like metformin. I do take that twice a day. But other than that, I'm not on insulin. I'm not on metformin. I'm not on any diabetic medication. I've done this all through diet. And so I just encourage you today to take that step, take your health seriously, and just to look at the long picture, because you don't want to end up without a leg. You don't want to end up blind. Okay. You don't want to have a stroke or a heart attack. We need to do, as we age, this is what I call intentional living in retirement age. And we need to be making sure that we do everything that's in our power to stay healthy so that these things don't happen to us. And then if they do, at least we don't blame ourselves for it and we don't have regrets. So this has been My Intentional Retired Life. My name is Barb. I just thank you so much for joining me today. And if you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. And I just thank you so much that you've chosen to watch this video. And I just would ask that you would continue to do so. This channel is very, very young. I've only done 3 videos. My first video was pretty good for the first one, but the second one has not been doing very well. So I don't know why, because I thought it was pretty good. It's all about Swedish death cleaning. So, maybe you'd like to watch that one as well. Bump up my views a bit or whatever. And definitely comment. Just let us know what what your struggles are, or what you have found that works best for you. And let's be respectful in the comments as well. All right. Thank you. And we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.